Hello and welcome back to Radio Free Urbanism, a podcast about urbanism and stuff. And today I'm here with Sully.
What's up? The boys are back in town, or at least two of three.
We're both here. We're back. It's been a little while, but we've got a show today. I'm definitely going to be talking about New York City and what's going on over there with the criminalization of cyclists. It's absolutely wild. And not only just wild what's happening, but like the fact that the police commissioners even they're saying the quiet parts out loud, which has been insane to see. We're going to be talking about that. What do you got a topic today, Sully?
Yeah, I can't wait to hear about that so I can add in my unqualified 2 cents for our listeners. No, I'm quite curious about that. I have tales from afar, or if you're from the East Coast, from nearby. But for me, it was afar. I got to take my very first trip to the East Coast of the United States. I went to the Strong Towns National Convention in Providence, Rhode Island. I would love to give you guys a project rundown of not a project rundown, a rundown of the conference, project rundown of the K-Line, because I also got to ride the K-Line the day it opened. So those are my big stories for today.
That's awesome. Yeah, I also got back from my big trip. I was in Europe for a few weeks, and I was on the not East Coast, but I was in Eastern Canada, I suppose you could say. But yeah, it was a good time, but I'm glad to be back. It's always nice coming back home and being like, I like this place. Like every time I get back to Vancouver, I get on the SkyTrain. I'm like, yeah, I'm glad to be living here. I'm very fortunate.
Lucky.
But yeah, do you want to go ahead and start with what's going on over there? What happened rather with the Strong Towns Convention?
Yeah, sure. So I didn't even know I was going to go. I mean, every year I've known about it's been during finals week. I've been in college, but this is the first year I wasn't in college. And I was like, oh, actually, I can make it to this thing. And they offered me free tickets because I have brought my local conversation, me and the people who help run it. We've brought it to what's called Stage 4, which sounds very official and scary, but it just means we've had a certain number of events and a certain membership. So they gave me free tickets. I was like, yeah, okay, I'll go. No idea what to expect. So the first thing, I flew into Boston. I was there for 2 days. I went, can you guess, Nick, what was the number one thing I wanted to see in Boston?
The number one thing, is it MARTA? Is that what it's called?
No, MARTA's in Atlanta.
I don't know. One of those things, MTA. Whatever their transit network's called. MBTA. The T? Is it the T?
Yeah, I think so. I don't even know. But I don't even know. Yes, the MBTA. I said that, the MBTA.
Okay.
The famous MBTA, which I knew about because of have you heard the Charlie Card song?
No, I think I know why I remembered it. It's because I watched Love on the Spectrum.
Okay. I don't know what that is. Okay.
One of the it's about autistic people dating, and one of the girls in the show really loves the T. Now it's coming back to me. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Well, there you go. But so yeah, I rode that. I rode the Silver Line, which is a bus that goes through a tunnel. It was supposed to be a subway, and then they ran out of money, so they just put a bus in a hole in the ground. And it's actually kind of cool. I posted this on Blue Sky. When you get on the BRT station at the main train station in the city, the BRT goes to the airport. And, you're a few miles from the airport, but in that BRT station, they have the plane departures, which is really neat. What a great feature. No, my number one attraction was not the local transit. I went to the Harvard Map Archive. And that was so cool.
Please tell me what that is.
Well, I learned when I was at UCLA that most large universities have map collections, and they're usually publicly accessible, and they're attached to their libraries often. And they just have rooms with big drawers full of maps, and they're organized in whatever order, but it's kind of just fun to go in and open random drawers and see what kind of maps you can find. So I did that when I was at UCLA. I went to the Stanford one, and they have the largest collection of maps of San Francisco, which was totally cool. And so at the Harvard one, I was like, hey, it's Harvard. It's probably going to be the best one. And it was pretty great. And just like all the other ones I've been to, I was the only person there. So it was great. Me and the map librarian, they've all had their own dedicated map librarians who are just the coolest people. So I got to see a globe from 1541, which was kind of neat. I guess it's a map. It was on a sphere. But probably The coolest map I saw, there were two. I saw a copy that was probably 4 feet wide, like a gigantic book. So when you opened it, it was almost 8 feet across, huge. And it was the Cassini maps of France, which took decades to make in the 1700s, I believe. And then I also got to see a planning document of It was from 1955, and it was the planning, sort of general plan for Havana, Cuba, which thank God never got implemented, because it was basically a plan to bulldoze the city and do these horrible block apartments. I mean, they were trying to add park space too, but it was really fascinating. They had all this transit planned. And that book also was like bigger than my wingspan. It was huge. And it was just interesting to see like mid 50s planning that never came to be. It kind of looked like Brasilia, the capital of Brazil, if any of our listeners have seen that, which is just this like grand planned capital. The other thing I got to go see, high on my list, was the West End Museum. A great example of bad planning was the West End Urban Renewal. I think it's the largest urban renewal project in American history. So in the mid 50s, the Truman administration passed a law saying if a neighborhood can be designated as a slum, the federal government will give that city just buckets of money to knock that slum down and replace it with fancy new housing. Supposedly, also the displaced residents would get to live there too, though that rarely happened. So the West End was an entire neighborhood of Boston that was just as dense and interesting and old as the North End, which is now super famous. And it was completely leveled, like down to the dirt. I can't remember how many residents were displaced. It's more than 20,000 people lived there. It was a whole neighborhood. It was mostly, the major ethnic groups were Polish, Jewish, and African American. And they cleared everyone out. They told everyone they were going to get a house in the new buildings, but they didn't. And what's crazy is that there's one single tenement building left, standing all by itself. It's super spooky and eerie. It looks like, if anyone remembers the new Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie, where that like Willy Wonka's dad lives in that weird building all by itself, it looks like that. So there's a museum about the neighborhood, about what disappeared and artifacts and stuff. And they had a copy of the Boston 1950 general plan. And it is so fascinating to read what the priorities were at the time. The word walkable and bikeable do not come up in this general plan. But yeah, it's all about clearing out undesirable. It's just, I mean, they were not holding back on what they called an undesirable neighborhood. And yeah, I mean, what it's been replaced with is just this very boring sort of apartment towers in parkland. Also, Nic, I believe you've frozen.
Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you. Yes. Okay, good.
Okay, yeah, I'm seeing that too. I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe my
you
NVIDIA broadcast doesn't work properly.
So I haven't even gotten to the Strongtowns convention yet. But yeah, the West End Museum is the closest thing to an urban planning museum I've ever been to, and it was totally awesome. But yeah, there was very little neighborhood resistance. So it was sort of just was sprung on that neighborhood, and the whole thing it's gone forever now.
Right.
Anyway, on that depressing note, I then went to the Strongtowns convention. The highlights for me were I got to meet a bunch of YouTubers that I'm sure a lot of us watch. I got to meet Alan Fisher, for one. I got to meet Noah, who does Streetcraft. I got to meet Rachel, who does the Strongtowns, like official YouTube channel. Justine Underhill, too, who's a really cool creator. Very interesting people. Great conversations. I got to meet Chuck Marone himself. That was pretty neat. I got to meet Strongtowns leaders from... Whoa, what is going on with your screen, Nic?
Don't worry about it. Just keep talking.
Okay. I got to meet Strongtown leaders from, like, tons of places. Chicago. I talked to the head of Strongtown Chicago for a while, and then, like, really small towns, too. Like Falls Church, Virginia, which I never even heard of before. But yeah, had really interesting arguments, which I would love for anyone who wants to comment on this. But like the intersection of YIMBYism versus strong towns, where it's like, how much do we care about just about building housing, no matter what it looks like, versus neighborhood character, which can often be weaponized. But also, I actually lean towards that being important as well. Like, we don't want our new housing to all have blank facades along the sidewalks, for instance. So had some really like friendly arguments about that with really smart people. Then I got to participate in a debate night I signed up for. So I debated whether or not state mandates are a good, like, positive force in creating more housing, or if they cause more problems than they solve. So I debated for them, and I called State Senator Scott Wiener a prophet. For those who don't know who he is a state senator in California, and he is the one who pens a lot of these housing laws that mandate ADUs and transit-oriented development. And so I said, like, he's a very positive force. But the guy who argued against me did a great job. He was from Georgia. He had a classic Georgia accent, which was just great to listen to. And he said, in his state, the state senators are completely clueless and will probably mandate for more suburban sprawl. So it was a really great time, really thoughtful. One of the coolest things I got to do is I went on 2 walking tours. The first was of a bike infrastructure project. It was a class 4 lane throughout a neighborhood very close to downtown Providence, but it was bi-directional. So it was on one side of the street. It was a bike path on one side of the street, but at street level. The city of Providence did not have that much money to do it. And what's interesting, it was like at least 2 miles long, I think. And what's interesting is they wanted to get federal money, but then the problem was that the median stripe of this road was in a Dominican neighborhood. And so it was red, white, and blue. And the federal government is so particular with exactly how they regulate roadways that they couldn't apply to a federal grant because of this one particular stripe on the road, because it's not in the official manual that governs roadways. So they had to use their own money. But for $2 million, they were able to do I think 2 mile long, class 4 lane, bollard separated. But the key was all of the bus stops they did with concrete. And they're floating bus stops, which was basically a way of making sure the project can't be torn out by people who don't like it because of how expensive it would be. But it also gives the project like a certain amount of legitimacy in how it looks, because I think, and this is what the designers of it. So the tour was led by the guys who designed it, which was so cool. And what they were saying is, if you just do a project that's bollards and striping, it might not be taken as seriously by both drivers and the neighborhood, and even by cyclists, right, who might not think it's safe enough to use. So having these bus stops on every other block that are super legit looking and made out of concrete gives it this like air of permanence. And I totally thought that was a great point that they were making. The other thing I noticed, though, okay, super specific nerd thing. I want to know if anyone who lives on the East Coast who's listening has heard of this, but the curbs in Providence and in Boston are all done with solid pieces of granite, which was completely crazy to me. Here in California, everything's concrete. And I was like, how much does this cost? Where's this granite from? Who cuts the granite? How do they make the curved pieces? I know this is weird, but the granite curbs like blew my mind. And they look cool too. But anyway, an interesting question I asked the designers is, how did you pick which side of the road to put the bike path? And the answer was quite simple. It was the side with fewer driveways, and also the side that didn't have a fire station on it. And I was like, okay,
that's pretty straightforward. Yeah.
Pretty straightforward. Nic, what do you think, though, in general, especially along commercial corridor, which this was, about doing the bi-directional on one side or each a class 4 on either side? Do you have a take on that?
I think it generally depends on what's there, but I think what you need to have in the first place is like the environment that's conducive to having singular directional on each side of the road. I think that's preferable in most cases, because it's generally it's more intuitive, right? It makes sense for most people, and you end up with less situations where it switches in between the two, which is a big problem for a lot of people. It's confusing. Even if you have signage, it can be confusing and also more dangerous. I feel like it creates more conflict, not only for people who are on the bike lane, so if they're going bi-directionally on one bike lane, but also for the times where you have to cross the street, which was the case, for example, when I was in Seattle. A lot of the time there would be a bi-directional bike lane that would switch over to a unidirectional bike lane on one side of the street or the other, and you'd have to go across these awkward diagonal bike lanes, which is just more areas for conflict. That's my quick 2 cents.
Yeah, they're doing that. So they're planning a bike path in Santa Barbara like that. And what I noticed is they're still, as great as these bike lanes are and as great as this was, and as fantastic as the designers were who led the tour, there's still a sense that it's not being given as much leeway or priority maybe as car infrastructure, because this bike lane, it's 2 miles long, but it doesn't get to downtown. It stops I don't know how many blocks, but let's say 4 blocks short of downtown. because there's a freeway that separates this neighborhood from downtown. The freeway bridge and the streets near there have parking, and they didn't want to take away the parking because the roadway narrows. And so it's like, there's still that sense of like, it wasn't quite prioritized to the level to take away parking, because the compromise that they made on the rest of the road was all the parking was retained. A driving lane was used for the bike lane, right? And you can obviously go either way. You can retain the biking lane, the driving lanes, and do the bike lane instead of that. Also, the center median turn lane, which seems to be a bit of an obsession with planners, because obviously I deal with like a lot of projects, and I see that during road diets, there's this obsession with keeping a center turn lane. I think that that's going away a little bit because people are realizing it's not really that well used, and someone turning a right or left really doesn't hold up traffic that much, especially if you like strategically block off streets or do other things like that. But yeah, so that was really cool. The other walking tour I went on was not about bike infrastructure. It was about an entire neighborhood. Basically, there was a freeway in Providence that was blasted like straight through downtown in the early 60s, I believe, which is when all that kind of stuff was done. And that freeway was torn down 15 years ago. So it's one of the earliest freeway teardowns. I think one of the only ones that's earlier is probably the San Francisco one, the Embarcadero Freeway.
Right.
So anyway, we did like a neighborhood tour of what's there now. Like, how has the city healed around this scar? And the tour was led by a planner who was actually put in charge of the sort of rezone project. And what's kind of cool, and I'm not going to say this fully accurately because it was confusing, but basically the city handed over the sort of implementation and zoning of this freeway scar to an independent group other than the city. And so like it was almost operated as almost like a mini city. Like they got to pick the zoning, work with developers, do public-private partnerships and stuff. So to me, it seemed like around maybe 70% of the land has been filled in with mostly mixed-use buildings. There's a Trader Joe's in one of them, local Italian restaurants. Italian food's great in Providence, by the way. The spot, here's another really cool thing. The freeway went over the river that goes through downtown Providence. They tore down the bridge, and then they used the like, what's the technical word for that? They used the bridge foundations to build a pedestrian bridge. So they didn't have to like re-drill into the riverbed. They just scraped the freeway down to like the concrete supports and then put a pedestrian bridge on top. And when we were there were tons of like people hanging out on the pedestrian bridge. There were some women who were sketching the downtown skyline, and I talked to them. They were really nice. And then on the other side, where the freeway was, on the other side of the river, there's parkland, and there's also Brown Medical School. There's a wind farm company headquarters, so like office space, more apartments. So they've added like thousands of apartments, something like that. And it's just really cool to see like advanced. It's almost, like when you get a scar and it heals over time. But there are still some lots that are, there's the pedestrian bridge. So you can see for those who can't see, the foundations of the bridge are like totally oversized because a 6-lane freeway used to go over them.
That's
and
beautiful.
If you follow that line of sight across the bridge, there's the park, and then those modern buildings right on the other side of the park are where the freeway kind of shot right through. Now, the problem they're having at the moment, which the guy leading the tour talked about, was even if they literally give the land away, the cost of building is so high that a developer it's still not a lucrative opportunity. Which is why there's still vacant parcels, which really sucks. Like the fact that like it's still that hard. There are things that are out of the city's control, like materials costs, but other things are not, obviously, like permitting. So there's still more work to do. And we also got a little tour of around the freeway, the urban renewal. There was a road that basically acted as a freeway ramp. So that road was then taken down to 1 lane instead of 2 lanes because it's a one-way street. And they did the bi-directional class 4 on it. But the new mayor is a bit less enthusiastic about bikes. I guess that's the diplomatic way he put it. So they're going to take out that class 4 and move the bike lane onto the sidewalk, which the local advocates, I believe they're called the Providence Streets Coalition, is going to try and fight that because it seems like a terrible idea. But yeah, so that was a fascinating walking tour. And also, Nick, what did you look up to find that picture? How did you, from my description, you were like,
I just typed in Providence new pedestrian bridge,
well, there
and
you
I got
go.
dozens of photos of it. Yeah.
There you go. So yeah, that was really cool, and it made me hopeful about maybe doing similar stuff in other cities. LA could so use that. All of downtown LA is surrounded by a giant freeway donut that totally ice. I mean, I work one block from one of the freeways, and no one ever crosses it because it's just such a gigantic, noisy, scary barrier, and it's actually in the ground, so there could be a cat park even if they didn't want to get rid of it. But
Yeah. There's
um,
I
yeah.
want to pitch a video idea to Strong Towns. Maybe I will in the next few months.
Mhm.
That just to emphasize the whole idea of highway expansion, especially in urban areas, because there's two great. I've lived in two examples, maybe the only two examples of major cities in North America where we don't have urban highways, which is here in Vancouver and also London, Ontario,
Mm.
which is something that a lot of people will decry if they don't understand the consequences of what happens to your city when you do go ahead and build those freeways in your city. Which I think, like, I want to investigate that, to really dig into it and ask the people who were part of those decisions. I mean,
Wow.
you could say that about, Jane Jacobs in New York City and Toronto, right? She helped prevent a few of those from going in, but
Right.
yeah, it's devastating. But it's great to see that opportunity being grasped, and things actually being built in their place. Like this pedestrian bridge is fantastic.
Yeah,
Same
it's
with
so
the
much land. I think he said
Embarcadero in
it
San
freed up
Francisco.
like 60 acres or something like that. Like it's a huge amount of land.
Yeah,
There's all the on ramps and off ramps too. Um, but yeah, it's bringing up London, Ontario. I feel like this place has gotten so famous with urban planners.
well, you can thank John Justin.
Yeah, but you just brought it up in a positive light. I've heard so much about this place.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I made a video about it to be like, hey, there's some good things. That's one of them. I didn't even talk about that. I don't think in
No
the
urban
video.
freeways. That's so fascinating.
Yeah,
You know, a
everybody's like,
lot of LA doesn't have it. Like all of the West Side and all of Hollywood, they never really built freeways through it. It just has stroads instead, which is kind
yeah,
of a weird
that's
trade-off.
that's London. Yeah, it's just filled with stroads. They're terrible as well, but it's a different type of terrible. At least there's that opportunity of proximity where we don't have in places like Detroit. Like I just released my video finally about Detroit,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see that, like, you see it so clearly. There's a great video by Segregation by Design where they really articulate what it looks like and how much those freeways scarred Detroit, how much land has been taken up by those highways, especially the interchanges. It's
Mm-hmm.
wild.
Oh
I think
yeah,
there was a really great image somebody posted online a while ago, and it was comparing a city in Italy versus a single interchange in Texas. And they were like the
oh it was
same
at Florence.
population, right? Or no, same area, but zero
Yeah,
population versus, like, I don't know, 50 or 60,000 people, right?
yeah, it was all of the old city of Florence would
That's
fit
it.
into the interchange,
Yeah. It's
and
insane,
it's
man. How
like
much space?
people that's almost like the tale of LA too, right? Where it's like you gamble with the space because it seems like there's so much space. So why not build a giant interchange? Why not fill up most of them with single family homes? And then it's like, oops, when the city grows another 10 miles out, that land is now a lot more valuable and it's being taken up by it's undervalued now. Um, in the case of, and then what's crazy too is like that freeway in Providence didn't just affect the land it was on, all the adjacent blocks were devalued, and a lot of those buildings were torn down too for parking lots for people getting right off the freeway. So the scar of the freeway is like multiple blocks wide, even on the blocks that it didn't go through. And you can see that. Like the urban fabric in Providence is not great. What makes it great are, compared to a lot of the cities I've been in, the streets in their downtown are incredibly narrow. I mean, they're wide enough for one lane and one parking lane. So like 20 feet wide, which is so cool. So like they're very shady and there's nice trees. Granted, I don't know what it's like in the winter because I've still never experienced winter. So
Not at all. Not for a day.
nope.
Oh my goodness. My
Yeah,
sweet summer child.
literally. Yeah.
It's not that bad.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it would be super bad to me because I haven't gotten the chance, but like Boston was it felt so livable. Like the downtown was super clean. It was busy. There was stuff going on. It was just like, it was, and also so compact. Like so many of the attractions are within walking distance. I did the Freedom Trail, which is you know, about the history of America, the founding of America and the Revolutionary War. And it's like, you can do the whole thing in a couple hours. And, yeah, no. My friend, I have a friend from Boston who I met in college who has nothing to do with urban planning. And he texted me, he was like, so how did you like it? And I told him, like, great zoning. Such great zoning. And he wrote back, he texted me back, he's like, nice to hear the urban planning take. He's like, nah. I was like, no, it's true. There's just so many mixed use buildings all over the place. I went to Brookline, and there's like townhomes, walk up sixplex apartments, single family homes, mixed use. They're all sort of mixed together. And when they do have wide streets, one thing that fascinated me is that Main Street in Brookline, which is called Beacon, I believe, Beacon Avenue, is like as wide as a boulevard in LA, if not wider. But instead of being all traffic lanes, it had trams in each direction, then like almost like a little bit of park space for trees, bike lanes, driving lanes, and parking. Oh no, and Nic has disappeared once again. Well, okay then. The other main thing, the reason I was in Brookline is I wanted to meet Jeff Speck because I have his book, Walkable City. There you are, Nic.
I'm back.
What's
Sorry.
going on with your internet today?
I don't know. My camera is not working. We're just going to go with it. It is what it is. People listening won't make a difference.
No. So I was saying I have Jeff Speck's Walkable City, one of the great urban planning books, way ahead of its time.
Fantastic.
So I wanted to meet him. So his headquarters are in Brookline. So I just like walked right up to his office, and it's tiny. It's like this tiny little office in a very, very cool old building. And there was one woman in the office. She's like, "Oh, you missed him by 2 minutes." I was like, "Dang." But she said, no, he's the kind of guy that would absolutely love to like have people stop by and sign the book. So, but next time, I'll have to do that next time. But yeah, so East Coast, my overall rating it's great. Great trains, great zoning, granite curbs. What's that about? So cool. And then as far as the Strong Towns convention goes, just a bunch of great people. And just also smart. It was nice to be for once in a room where you don't have to explain what Strong Towns is. Like that was already where most people were. I met a lot of elected officials too. They were great. I met mayors and council people who like wanted to be there, which was such a refreshing thing for me.
It's a homecoming, right? Like,
yeah,
even in your own community, it's really nice. But to go beyond that and meet people from around the country is wild.
Yeah, people from very different places. But all like with applying the Strong Towns urbanism thought process to those places. Even just hearing the different ways they organize their groups and hearing the different types of projects, like outside of California, in the Midwest especially, there are people who are able to pull off projects that we would never be allowed to pull off because those cities are a bit more, you could say that they're more desperate, but you could also say they're more welcoming to innovation and ideas. Like they'll let Strong Towns groups paint some bulb outs or put benches in the park or even paint sidewalks, which in my town would have to go through 3 years of frickin' historic landmark committee review. So that was really cool. So anyway, I should probably stop blabbing on about Strong Towns.
We'll never have enough Strong Towns.
Your story for the day. What is going on?
Well, let's get into this story here. Yeah, this is from Streets Blog NYC. It's something did we touch on this a while ago? Because it really broke a few months ago, but it's kind of developed since. Did we talk about it? Do you know?
I will tell you once you start.
You know what? Doesn't matter. Let's get into it anyway.
Okay.
From Streets Blog NYC. So the criminalization of cyclists has been continuing. So a mom and designer, Frederick Paulson, was hit with both a $190 traffic ticket and a criminal summons for allegedly running a red light and failing to yield to a pedestrian, despite no pedestrian being present. So she briefly stopped before proceeding safely behind another cyclist, right? And this is like right away, like always have a camera on your bike. Like always have a camera on your bike, and not to shill like Insta 360, but I love having that camera on my handlebars because I know it's recording all the time. I rarely have to do anything. I just plug it in once a week, put it on my bike when I go to work, turn it on, whatever. Just so you have proof of this stuff, of what happens. Same thing if you have to drive too. Get a dash cam, like incredibly valuable. But anyway, so this incident is part of this broader thing that's been happening in NYC with the NYPD, where they've been cracking down on cyclists and criminalizing the actions of cyclists when this is not the case with people who are inside of cars, which is mental. So this is mostly towards e-bike users, but it has been with other cyclists as well. So this is led by Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch, who claims the effort targets only, quote, out of control riders. However, critics say the crackdown is arbitrary, overly aggressive, and not based on meaningful data. So e-bike riders account for just 0.04% of pedestrian injuries. And that is a fact that is pretty wild. So I'm going to show on the screen here a diagram to kind of illustrate what that actually looks like. So what we have here is car and truck injuries to pedestrians, 9,610 in the year 2024. That's NYPD's data. And then e-bikes, 37, guys. Insane. And this is the most, this is the part that you read and you're like, are you fucking kidding me? This is what the police commissioner, Jessica Tisch, said previously, that her campaign against e-bikes stems from data, but later admitted that it was based only on complaints about electric bikes that she has heard. Guys, it's literally feelings over facts. They're criminalizing people on e-bikes and bicycles because of feelings. Like, this is something that is a concern. It's something that needs to be addressed, but like, it's just so out of whack. It's hard to comprehend. It really is. And I don't know if this is just part of this bigger culture war that's going around when it comes to bikes or what, or it's the fact that e-bikes are relatively new. And I know this is something that's happening in the Netherlands as well, but like, that's on a whole nother scale. Like, they've already reached the point where their streets are way more safe than we have in North America. Like, literally over, I think it's like a 5-1. Like, they have a better than a 5-1 when it comes to road fatalities. Like, it's not even close. And I can understand why they start to crack down on illegal e-bikes, but like, it's just insane. Like, I don't even have words for it.
No, and this is not unique. First of all, I do think it's an e-bike thing. I think that the e-bike thing is a subset of the culture war that's actually less cultural, I think. Because I think that people who hate bikes overall, for like no apparent reason, is a much more cultural war thing, or hate bike lanes. The e-bike thing, I wrote a whole bunch of YouTube comments about this a while back, and a lot of them got taken down, by the way, for some reason. I don't know why. But like, there is a distinct e-bike scare in Santa Barbara. Just this week, I emailed a council member about State Street, and he was all sunshine and roses, except for the point in his email back to me where he was like, he said, the only thing ruining things right now are the e-freaking bikes.
E-freaking bikes.
E-freaking bikes. And I was like, and there's this perception that it's all kids too. There was a comment that someone sent to me because I wrote an article this week about bike infrastructure in Santa Barbara, and someone said that most people who ride e-bikes are young boys anyway or something. And I was like, first of all, we have no data on that.
Probably not true.
Probably not true. But like, I don't know. I would love to hear what people think about this issue, because I kind of get it, because it's obviously true that the most unruly cyclists I see, particularly on State Street where there aren't cars, are young boys on e-bikes who, by the way, are often riding things that I don't think you could classify as e-bike. I think they're riding electric motorcycles.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't even think the pedals necessarily work on a lot of these things. But on the other hand, I also think that e-bikes are this super exciting tool that can unlock non-car mobility for people who live in neighborhoods that were zoned with giant chunks of residential with commercial far away. And like, that's probably not going to change very quickly, which we talked about with Alex, you may remember.
Yep.
So yeah, and I don't like, and I know that they're not hurting people, but I also get, like, if you're a pedestrian and you're standing on the corner and these e-bikes are going by, I don't know.
No, it's not to dismiss it as a problem at all. It is an issue. Like, I've said this in my own videos. I had made a video about licensing e-bikes in New York City. I've said this. I said that these types of vehicles, so basically overpowered micromobility vehicles, are far too easy to acquire. They're just far too easy to acquire, and they are dangerous, but it pales in comparison to the actual dangers on our streets. And if you're actually trying to fix the safety problems on the street, it's not the thing that needs to be attacked head on. There's so many other things that we can do that can address both problems at once. We can both make it safer for pedestrians from cars and e-bikes at the same time. It's all about the infrastructure. You can't educate the stuff out of the system. It just doesn't work. You can do that over and over and over again, and it's insanity. It's like that old saying, right? Do the same thing over and over, expecting different results. It's insanity. It doesn't work.
Well, yeah, that's like the 3 E's. That's what the police, they have this whole e-bike. We talked about that bike ordinance that Santa Barbara passed and how much time they spent talking about e-bikes. And the police commissioner was talking about how they're going to do the 3 E's and they're really going to focus on education and they're going to go to all the middle schools and teach the kids how to ride e-bikes. And I'm like, I mean, they also do like don't take drugs campaigns, and I'm sure like half the kids are vaping. So
no, it is a good idea to teach them how to ride them, right?
Yes.
But it seems like the only tools they want to use is mostly enforcement, education second, and engineering's the one that really just gets left on the wayside.
But I don't know, has anyone really figured out how to engineer specifically for e-bikes? Like, what does that look like to you?
I think basically you're having laws where you're not being able to use it for over 30 kilometers an hour, like 19 miles an hour. That's kind of the limit that they should be at. If it's above that, it's a licensable vehicle. I think that's totally reasonable. And that's what it needs to be.
No, I meant though in terms of engineering, in terms of like, what is our, how, if at all, how does our bike infrastructure change now that there's e-bikes that can go, 25 miles per hour?
That they go 25 miles per hour?
Yeah.
That's again, it comes down to enforcement and having licensing and things like that. You have to do that. Okay. But when it comes to infrastructure, it's the same things that you normally have. It's about daylighting. It's about having shorter crossings for pedestrians, for less interaction. And I think that's the biggest deal you can do is reducing the interaction. That's the problem that's not being addressed. Right. The biggest complaint people have about e-bikes is e-bikes speeding on the sidewalks. It's like, well, why are on the sidewalks? Because there's no bike lanes. That's why they're there. So It's about reducing the interactions in the first place.
The biggest complaint I see is also drivers saying that they're not going fast enough, like that they got stuck behind them on a street or whatever. It's the same thing. It's like we need to separate our modes. On streets that aren't very wide, we need to really decide what's worth, is the parking worth keeping? Can the cars share? The edge lane roads that they do in the Netherlands are a great thing that's never really been done here.
It was done in San Diego, wasn't it, for 2 weeks?
Yeah, they tried it in San Diego, and it was like a political disaster, so they ripped them out.
God, what a silly
thing. Why you got to do stuff with concrete, like they told me in Providence. Then it's harder to rip.
Honestly.
But edge lane roads are just paint anyway.
I'm just really hoping that they figure this out. They realize that it's not working, and I hope that one guy, is it Mamdani, gets in?
Yeah. Yeah,
he seems to be on board. He actually had a conversation with Miser. Miser recorded it, and he seems to be all in with micromobility. We'll see if that actually comes to fruition. But if that guy gets in, there could be a serious change in the city. It'd be fantastic to see because Adams hasn't been doing the job, and Cuomo doesn't seem like he'll be doing much better of a job either.
No, they're sort of the sort of response. But yeah, that whole thing that you're saying that the police said that they're responding to complaints. That is, I think people, if they knew, they would be scared how much of local governance, and I don't even know at what level, but like definitely how much local governance really is like politicians responding to the last couple emails they got. Because city council members have straight up told me, like, if they get, 10 emails in a row, all complaining about the same thing, whether or not there's a single statistic to back that thing up, they've got to respond because at the end of the day, those are the people voting for them, and the people aren't voting on the statistics.
Yeah.
They're voting on how they feel. So it's
true.
Like, with this e-bike thing, it's like, that's what everyone in Santa Barbara seems to be complaining about. I'm sure the statistics are very similar to New York, where it's caused basically no problem at all.
Yeah.
In terms of safety.
So I guess that's our job, perhaps as, I don't want to say this word, but I'm going to say it, as influencers in the urbanist space, to hopefully entertain and potentially educate people on these matters and kind of change the zeitgeist around this. And that's it.
I do think the saving grace is often that the population, there's a difference between the emailing city council people population and the population. I think the population is often much more reasonable than you'd think. Like our job is actually maybe not that. Like when I see, when like the actual city council meeting comes up or when the bike lane gets built or when they do a survey, you see much less controversy. But yeah, I don't know that the e-bike thing, there seems to be a particular like vitriol from older people too. And I'm really not trying to like classify anyone, but a lot of the complaints I see, and I'm like, are they like, is it the same kind of vitriol that's always directed kind of towards what the kids are doing?
Which is kind of funny because it's also the demographics that's most taking up e-bikes because they can afford them and, they're easier to ride. So people are getting on them who are elderly. Like that's definitely in the Netherlands. You see a lot of elderly people riding e-bikes, but I think that's also the case in North America too. But it just depends on what cohort you're in. Have you ever ridden a bike? And I think a lot of people, they haven't in a very long time and don't even know what an e-bike is. They just see thing go fast, dangerous.
Yes. Yeah, I've been riding my e-bike to work. Life update for everyone. I mentioned last time we had an episode that the D line was going to be closed. And so rather than biking to the B line, I've just been biking all the way to work. It's like 4.5 miles, maybe it's 5, I don't know. But it takes 28 minutes, I've noticed. Anyway, so then I store my e-bike in the workplace. And because the whole building, it's so funny. I should make a video about this. No part of the building is set up to accommodate bikes. Like there's no bike parking in the parking garage there. So then they said I can bring the bike into the office, but then like I'm literally going down hallways, opening like doors and like awkwardly shoving my bike through and holding onto the seat. But yeah, what I found is a lot of the people, they're like, what is that? They're like, is that a motorcycle? Like they don't know. And it's a beefy looking bike, right? Because it has the battery pack and everything. And they've never touched one. They don't know how it works. They don't know what pedal assist is. So yeah, it's kind of, and that's especially in LA because of how few people ride bikes here. In Santa Barbara, people definitely know what it is. But it's cool, kind of cool biking to work. So I want to do this 360. How much does one of these cameras cost?
I think you can get the previous models. I think the latest one's the X5. I have the X4. I think they're probably like $400 US, maybe. Okay. But they're super useful. I really like them for when I'm doing like bike interviews as a backup camera because it's like capturing the whole thing. So if it's like, oh, I didn't capture this thing, it's not the best quality for that case, but it's there. You have it. You have something, which is really nice. But again, when it comes to just as a dash cam, fantastic.
Yeah, being able to pick where the footage is facing is really cool, like in post, because I'd love to show you guys I'd love to make a video for you guys of what it's like bike commuting across a bunch of LA. It's wild. There are a few more cyclists than you'd think, but obviously very few. The wildest thing is the intersections in the residential neighborhoods are gigantic. They're the biggest intersections I've ever been in. And they're just 2-lane roads coming together, and somehow they manage to make them, it feels like you're crossing a tennis court every time you get to it, like the long way. Yeah. And I'm like, how? Like there's so much room to do stuff here. There could be a park here. Yeah. There could be so much going on. But anyway, so yeah, I don't know. The e-bike scare. That's what people are calling it. The e-bike scare. They're scared.
We can't lie. They are more dangerous, but they're infinitely less dangerous than the dominant mode in our world today. So
yes, absolutely.
I think I'm pro e-bike. Maybe. You might think that. It might be true. I am.
So speaking of bikes,
yeah.
I posted a story on Blue Sky earlier today. I think, that has to do with this. I wanted to bring up in today's show. I came across a new study. A study that looked at street design in Copenhagen and basically extrapolated their bike mode share and street design and said that if all of the major cities in the world had the same type of street design, there would be a 6% reduction in carbon emissions from private vehicles and a 412 billion mile per year increase in cycling, which is pretty wild.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And they were looking at a percentage, I think, of the roadway that's dedicated to bike facilities, basically. So I guess there's kind of a mode share associated with that percentage. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that was pretty cool. And it's like, this is not theoretical. Copenhagen exists in this world. It's a functional
It's a real
city.
place.
Yeah.
It's a real place. Yep.
It is a real place. You didn't go there on this trip, right?
No, I was going to, but I just didn't have the time to be able to do that, unfortunately.
Got it.
Because it is like very high up on my list of places to go to in Europe. It's like, I have to go there next. It's like the must go to now. I've completed the Netherlands. I've 100%ed the Netherlands. Like
Yeah, because what you've got to return to us with is there was sort of a bit of beef online a few years ago, I think, of the Dutch approach versus the Copenhagen approach, the Danish approach, I guess,
True.
to cycling infrastructure, because it is a bit different.
Like the whole Copenhagenized type of thing. Yeah, that came from being like
Yeah.
Copenhagen is the gold standard. I don't know. I haven't been there, but it looks great. It seems like they're doing great things, and I'm sure this is the type of battle you want to have. It's like, oh no, two beautiful people are fighting over me, type of thing, right? Like, it's a good
Yeah.
place to be in. Oh no, I want to know for myself. Like Skitch says in the comments here, I liked Copenhagen more than Amsterdam, especially for biking,
Oh.
which is saying something. Yeah.
And why
Like we
was that?
talked.
I want to know why.
Remember we talked to Alex Rotmans,
Yes.
and he was saying he doesn't bicycle. Like that's just not what he does. And we were like, you could have tried in Amsterdam, but probably not a great place. And then I was there right a few days later, and I was like, yeah, no. Amsterdam is infinitely more busy on a bicycle than anywhere else in the Netherlands. I quickly remembered, like as soon as like I like sped run Amsterdam. I was only there for maybe 2 hours for my entire trip. Like I got into Schiphol, I got on the bus, went right to the bike shop, got on the bike, and immediately left the city. And it was at rush hour in the evening. And holy crap. Holy
It's
crap.
scary.
You know
No,
what?
it's
I could
scary.
probably show you how many people were on bikes. It's just, it always surprises me. Like I was there less than a year ago, but I was still like, oh my God, there's so many people on bikes here. It's ridiculous.
Wow. That car went by a bit fast.
Yeah. But
Oh,
yeah, it's probably not a great place to bicycle if it's like you're new to that. I wouldn't highly recommend it, but
right.
it's good. It's going to be better than a lot of places in North America still, I think for the most part. Really, you should just go to a park, and that's where
Wow.
you should start biking and try
Oh,
that first.
these bike signals remind me of something else. Okay, to go all the way back to that tour I took of the bike infrastructure, I think everyone's going to find this very interesting. They didn't have enough money for bike signals at every intersection
It
because
didn't?
doing new signals is very expensive. So instead, they said no right turn on red because if a bike is going to use the pedestrian signal, that can't happen with a right turn on red. So they said no right turn on red, and they put up a sign at each intersection that says cyclists use the walk phase to cross the road. And that, buying a couple of those signs was infinitely cheaper than new signals. So I thought that was really, really smart and interesting.
That's a pretty interesting idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like
So
that.
like I said, the whole project was $2 million, which is actually very little for
It,
something like
like
that.
honestly, I heard something out of London, Ontario when I was there from my brother-in-law. He was saying that uh they're building this new BRT system in London, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they've built these bus shelters. And he's like, yeah, they cost $800,000 each. I was like, no way. No way. And
What?
I saw them and they're just like a regular like glass bus
That's the price of
shelter.
a house,
Somebody's like stuff in their pockets. I was like,
bro.
and I
The
looked it up. It's like,
dysfunction.
it's true. That's how much they said they spent on these things. Like, who's getting paid? This is
If either
insane.
of us get hit by a bus, it was big bus,
It
guys.
was big bus.
Big bus. We were catching wind of their. By the way, though, this footage, I love how you're naming your files. You're so organized.
I mean, you have to be. I literally got a terabyte of data from
Oh,
that trip. A terabyte, guys.
wow.
It was going to take me 10 hours to transfer it to a hard drive and then to my computer. I literally just
Yeah.
took like the SSD out of my laptop and put it on my desktop and then transferred it. Took 10 minutes.
Wow.
It's so much data, but it's organized. We're get through it. Videos are going to be coming out hot. This is I think I've made like 4 videos in the past 6 months. It's going to be like one a week at least. So get
Wow.
ready. Hold on to your pants, your
Yeah.
butts.
It
Um,
does blow you away every
yeah.
time.
So it was a great trip. I was on an e-bike, which was great because I needed it. I went probably 3 times as far as my last trip. And even then there was some really hard days. The headwind, don't care if you're on an e-bike. Yeah,
Mhm.
it was a few of the days were really tough. I was really hurting. One of the days it actually died. I only had 5 kilometers to go, but oh man, those are some really tough. That was the toughest biking I've done in a long, long time. But it was a lot of fun. Got to
Well,
see
at
some
least
cool
there's no
things.
hills.
Yeah, just the Dutch Hill, the wind. See, here's
Yeah.
some sneak peek from day one in just leaving Amsterdam. Anyway, I do have a wug mug, a what grinds my gears. Something ground my gears today.
Oh, I can't wait to hear it.
You ready for this?
I am.
It's been a while. So there is a street in Vancouver called King Edward, and they had been preparing to put in a new bike lane here. And I was so excited. I was like, guys, they're doing a thing. They're going to be building a bike lane. It's going to be parking protected, pretty cheap to make. There's tons of space. They just put down some paint. People park on this side. You bike on that side, close to the curb. Fantastic. Well, we got a goddamn bait and switch, ladies and gentlemen. I was like, I walked by because it's been months that they've been like preparing for this, and they've done some good things. Like they've got some daylighting that they've put in. I'll share my screen here for folks that are watching so they can see. And they've got some daylighting, which is great. I love that. It's near a school, and that's good stuff. But the problem is the bike lane here at the intersection is by the curb, and there's like a concrete divider to separate you from the cars. Cool. But on the ground, you can see where they painted over the guidelines they were previously going to paint so that it was going to continue to be a curbside bike lane. Instead, they shimmy you over back towards the moving traffic, and now the cars are parked beside the curb, and you are close to the cars that are moving. And in the door zone, there is a buffer between the parked cars and the bike lane, which is credit where credit's due. It's something. But still, guys, this is not AAA. This is only going to hit the people like me who are willing to ride there. This is not going to get into the interested but concerned, the biggest cohort of people we need to get on bikes. This isn't it. It's not it. It's just so disappointing. Like, it's 2025 in June, and this is in Vancouver. I'm just like...
You're going to have to find how this happened. You're going to have to do a deep dive on this document.
I know. I was like, how do I figure this out? I got to contact somebody because it's like really weird. I know like a few months ago, there was some women, I talked to them and they were in the neighborhood. They were very nice, but they were putting out pamphlets being like, we don't need this bike lane. It's dangerous. And I don't know if that had something to do with it. They were complaining about it and then they made changes. It made no difference to the parking, the way they've built it now versus what it was before. It was going to be the same amount of parking. It just changed the position in which people are going to be biking. And some people might look at this and say, stop crying. Like, this is totally fine. But like think about this. Now you had a situation where not only were you as a cyclist, not right beside cars flying by you, but also have a space in between you with the cars, an actual physical barrier. But on top of that, now cars who want to park will have to cross the bike lane to get to where they're going, or when they're leaving the bike lane, or sorry, when they're leaving parking to cross the bike lane as well, which is just more areas of conflict. It's just unnecessary. So maybe I'm missing something. If you see this and you can see, maybe Nic, you're ridiculous. There's some issue that I'm not seeing. Please let me know. But I don't know what it is and why this would be better than the curbside parking protected bike lane.
It's not. No, you've now ground my gears as well.
It was so,
especially because those black dotted lines were already there.
I was like, that's where they were going to build it.
Last minute thing.
Yeah.
You know, I've learned that a lot of times these decisions happen behind closed doors last minute with a couple engineers and a city council member because they got a bad comment, maybe like from those women. Like, you know what? Let's just do that. And it's possible they could be held legally accountable if, well, I don't know what the laws are in Canada, but it definitely in California, if there was a publicly presented, finalized plan. And, you know, it had to be announced 3 days in advance as the minimum and all that. And then they build something else that actually violates a couple transparency laws.
Mm-hmm.
So
I will have to look into it. I'm going to ask my engineer friends about it, what they think about it first, and go from there. Because it's too bad. Because like, there's been some good things. Like, for example, just the other day on the weekend, I went for a ride, just for a leisurely ride. And there's a portion. So if you don't know, the Burrard Bridge is one of the busiest bicycle paths in North America. It's a bridge that just connects Kitsilano with downtown, and they installed it in 2010. It's fantastic. It's always busy. It's fantastic. So good. I love it. But if you're coming from the beaches and you're going to Burrard, you usually want to go up Pacific because it's kind of a gentle grade instead of, you know, taking a really steep hill up to get to Pacific where there is a bike lane. Well, they've added a curbside protected bike lane now. It's very narrow, which is kind of crappy, but hey, it's protected. Fantastic. Before you're just riding there with parked cars on one side in a single lane with cars having to wait for you going up Pacific. So way better. But like, I don't know. I still have to criticize the nonsense where it's not working because it's not good enough.
No, you got to hold it to a high standard. And they're probably not going to restripe that street for years now.
Yeah, that's what exactly I was like, this is going to be another decade at least before this would get addressed.
Right. Of course, when it comes to taking stuff out, they do it within months, like the Edgelane Road in San Diego.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Or the bike lanes in Stanley Park.
No.
Oh, it is what it is. Let's just keep fighting the good fight. Do what
All
we
right.
can.
Should I know we only have a few minutes before we get to an hour, so maybe this will be a full story for next time, but as long as we're talking about what grinds gears, as if I don't complain enough. We have a word in Yiddish. It's kvetch. Have you heard the word kvetch?
No.
You don't want to be called a kvetchy boy. That's someone who complains too
Kvetchy.
much. Yeah, so
A
I'll
person
give
who
a kvetch.
complains a great deal. Isn't that? I'm not even going to say anything. Sounds like my mom.
Okay. So I will kvetch. I have fought for so many years with the people who want cars to come back to State Street. And every time it feels like we have a city council meeting where they reaffirm that there's not going to be cars, and every time they do a public survey with 5,000 respondents and 80% of them say they don't want cars, and they do a business survey and 75% of the businesses say they don't want cars, and they do an economic study, and the economic study finds that pedestrian plazas outperform busy roads 10 to 1. It feels like the issue finally gets put to rest. It has reared its ugly head yet again. They're going to vote on it again. And I'm like, no, I actually, some of the Stronghouse members, we went back, we looked at the meeting notes. They already voted on this in September. They voted. And by the way, since September, there's a new council person, and they're even more anti-car than before. So the fact that this small group of pro-car people whose main spokesperson is the mayor, who's in opposition to everyone else, the fact that they keep bringing this up, and I've been told through various channels that their goal is to wear us down, to get us, to make us so sick of arguing about this that we say, just forget it, and that they can bring cars back because they know that most of the advocates are young, they know that they have day jobs, they know that the city council meetings are in the middle of the day, and they know that when you have a mayor and you have a couple guys who own big properties downtown saying that they want cars, that has a lot of import. And so it's reared its ugly head once again. It was leaked to me that on July 1st they're going to try and vote on it again. So anyway, I published an article in a local paper about it because it's been the same arguments, the same lame, stupid arguments for 5 years, including e-bikes being dangerous and somehow cars being safer than that. But it's just the same stupid arguments about how chain stores won't rent a storefront unless their analysts at corporate headquarters can account for the number of cars that are going to drive by, and that's how they get loans to open a franchise, and da-da-da-da-da, which is crazy because, of course, if you go back to 2015 when the vacancy rates were really bad, everyone was saying, oh, Santa Barbara's become a bunch of chain stores, it lost all of its personality, so it's like people will just complain about whatever. Not to mention the fact that like the Strode side CVSs are closing too. So anyway, I continue to fight the good fight with all my friends and volunteers, and thank you so much to them. But it's just like these people will not stop. We need to like get this done, and I don't know how. I don't know what else to do.
That's tough.
Yeah,
That's some good kvetching though.
It was major kvetch. But hey, I also said thank you to people. I do have a solution. I think the solution is what Ventura, California did, which is the next major town in the southward direction of Santa Barbara. They just voted. They had an official vote to forever not have cars on their main street, and it passed. And we have not had an official vote like that. We've just had a lot of staff direction, comments on the master plan, vague like interim plans that run through 2026 and stuff like that. So it's like we need to commit. We need to vote for a different mayor in 2026. And just like put this to rest. It just needs to go away. It's like stop already. But yeah, and this time they thought they were so sneaky. They had a little economic study that they put together. Some of the property owners, and they privately sent it to the city council members and presented it to them. Little did they realize that some of those city council members are friends with Strong Towns and leaked it to us, which of course I won't say who, but it was so silly. They said like sales taxes are down since the cars were banned, and I was like, 2020, like they did it as like an average over time, and I'm like, you can't include 2020 in like your average. That's so unfair. It doesn't make any sense. And it's also like Macy's closed, and they were going to close even before the pandemic started, and all these other stores like CVS closed. I was like, whatever, it's all dumb. So Well, whatever. We're fighting the good fight. I don't think it's going to go in that direction, personally.
Well, I don't know if you can still hear me. Maybe
I
you can.
Yes.
But my computer is frozen, it seems. So
Cool.
we'll have to figure out how to close the show.
Oh my. Okay. Well, if everyone wants to watch me like eat dinner now, that's
Enjoy. All
yeah,
right. Well,
that's fine with me. I'll just be sitting here reading Walkable City. Oh, I have laundry to fold. Do you guys want to watch me fold my laundry?
not quite. Not tonight.
You
Maybe
can
next
see
time.
what percentage of it is yellow. That might be
We want to get the actual data. I want to see a diagram on that.
I
A pie
should
chart.
actually do that. It's a high percentage. More than most people, I would say that. I think what else is there to say is next time we're going to get Ethan to show up.